What's up, everybody? Welcome. Thanks for joining in. My name's Isaiah. If you guys haven't been following along, I am one of your homeless heroes, and we've been just following closely along since this entire thing began with President Trump basically signing an order or a declaration to be able to clear out all the homeless encampments in Washington D.C. This was about a month ago that he signed this order and put different organizations, agencies, and task force together to be able to go out and clear out the homeless encampments in an effort to be able to make the city safer, to be able to clean it up, and to be able to offer the assistance that these individuals need from a mental, behavioral, addiction standpoint, as well as to be able to get them some housing. And that's what this was supposed to be about, from what we understood. And we did a live just kind of covering it and asking you guys what your opinion was on it. Did you think that it was going to be helpful? Did you think that it would be harmful to these individuals? Just drop a comment and let us know you guys' thoughts. And you guys did just that. We appreciate you guys for that. We love you for that because we love that open dialogue in this community. So we got lots of comments, and then we followed up with another live behind that. Basically, they gave an ultimatum a little bit after that, saying, "Hey, listen, it's our way or the highway. You know, if you don't want to get the assistance that's needed, we're going to offer to you guys. It's either going to be shelters or it's going to be jail. But you can't stay around here. So what's it going to be?" And that was kind of where they kind of left things at. And we did a live asking you guys your opinion on that. Do you think that that's a little bit harsh? Is that fair? Is it even legal? Drop a comment and let us know. And you guys dropped a ton of comments letting us know, giving us your feedback and your thoughts on it. So we wanted to just follow up. There's been a lot of things going on in the news in the world since this entire thing began a month ago. So things kind of went quiet on that front. And I wanted to kind of research and look and see what happened because, again, we hadn't heard much. There's been a lot of other things that we know transpiring, assassinations, deaths, kidnappings, all type of stuff. The world's just not in a good place and space right now, unfortunately. So those things demanded more coverage, and it was understandable that those things should get more coverage. They want more coverage than what was going on in the homeless community, but that crisis still exists, and we do know that the efforts are still in place to be able to clear those encampments. So we wanted to just kind of look and see exactly where we're at. So 1 month later, has the Trump administration delivered on their promises made regarding the homeless situation? So that's what we're discussing today. As always, if you haven't subscribed, we ask that you guys subscribe. We love to have you as a part of our community. And then also, please drop comments. If you know anything about us, we are going to make sure that we comment back, have some great dialogue with you, or at least acknowledge your comment, right? So whether it be positive or negative, we're exercising that freedom of speech. Please drop comments. Please make sure that you drop your opinions and let us know what it is that you think, because we want to make sure that this is getting the attention that it needs and it deserves. So again, 1 month later, has the Trump administration delivered on their promises made regarding the homeless situation? So let's just kind of look at some statistics. But before we do that, let's make sure that we address what those were. So Trump made a couple of promises. He made a promise to clear the homeless encampments. So he made promises to America, and he made promises to the homeless community. Let me back up a little bit, excuse me. So we want to make sure that we address each one of those things so that we can be fair in seeing if he actually delivered on those promises. So the first promise that he made was to America, which is he was going to clear the homeless encampments from DC. That was the promise that he made. Let's look at some statistics here and some information. It says White House promises. 3 days after the federal law enforcement surge in D.C. began, Trump posted on Truth Social that the homeless must move out immediately, pledging, "We will give you places to stay, but far from the Capitol," right? So again, it's like basically like, you know what, you ain't gotta go, home, but you got to get the hell out of here, right? And that's kind of what it was. Like, we don't want you in eyesight of earshot. We don't want you anywhere around us. We want you far, far away from here. But we'll make sure that we take care of you. We'll get you shelter. We'll get you according to this. We'll make sure that we will give you a place to stay as long as it's far away from the Capitol. So this was a promise that he made to the homeless community. Let's move on. 2 days later, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told reporters that homeless residents would have the option to be taken to a homeless shelter and get addiction or mental health services, or be susceptible to fines or jail time. So this was 2 days later after that, press secretary says, hey, look, we'll make sure that we give these individuals access to these things. And as we talked about before, the ultimatum is if they don't want to take advantage of these things, then they're essentially loitering the streets and just making excuses for not being better individuals or doing better in society. So we're just going to give them fines or we're going to give them jail time. Now, I don't know why you would fine a homeless individual. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I mean, it is what it is. That's what the report says. So far, it seems like these individuals are following through with what it is that they said, according to the White House. Let's move on. The mayor's office said the district added more than 100 shelter beds during the surge and accelerated outreach to connect residents to services and housing. City officials say more than 80 additional residents have accepted shelter from the city during that period. So it sounds like that we're getting some progress here. They've added additional beds, and so far, some of the residents have taken advantage of those beds, and they're getting off the streets. So, according to the White House, it seems like this is working out famously. Let's continue. The White House says more than 50 homeless encampments have been cleared by multi-agency teams since Donald Trump's law enforcement surge in D.C. began in early August, and authorities are working to locate and clear additional encampments. So, again, he said he was going to clear those encampments. He said that he was going to offer shelters. The press secretary said that they were going to offer addiction and mental health assistance and things like that. And according to the White House, it appears that they're actually following through with these things, and they're doing what it is that they said they were going to do, and they are actually keeping that promise. Bowser spokesperson Daniel said the city's Department of Behavioral Health has offered mental health services for anyone who needs them, as it did well before the surge began. He did not have data on how many have taken advantage of that in the past month. Last week, the city conducted a census on unsheltered people and counted 764 individuals who were still living outside. So that is a huge number of individuals. At least it sounds that way. Now, what we don't have the information or the exact data on, at least I don't, is how many individuals that they were before this surge began, before this whole task force came out and started sweeping these individuals out. All right, because an encampment, it says they removed 50 encampments, but we don't know how many individuals were living in those encampments and how big they were. Right, so we don't know. Here in Vegas, the homeless community is so vast, so huge, just like in California. Probably not quite as much as California, but we have a lot of individuals that live above ground, and we have a lot of individuals that live in the tunnels as well. So I know that these numbers are in the thousands. So if there was only 764 people left, in contrast, if you look at it that way, that would be a huge win. We'd be celebrating and saying, think something positive is happening and getting done, because we've minimized this down from thousands and thousands of people to just 764 individuals now being displaced. But that number does sound, like a big number. But again, in comparison to what was it before? We know that it's down now, but we don't know if that's good or we don't know if that's bad. That's just the census and the statistic that they took up. Trump also made a promise to America to decrease the crime and make the neighborhoods safer. So supposedly that's what this was supposed to be about. It was about to be able to decrease crime, make the neighborhood safer, and just build up the aesthetics, the way that it looks. There's just not people loitering or sleeping, on the streets and in front of businesses and things like that, because they believe that attributed not just to the way that the city looked, but again, to the crime rate. Right. So let's look at some statistics as well as relates to that. As of September 2025, crime has decreased in Washington, D.C. since President Trump ordered the clearing of homeless encampments in August 2025. Crime rates were already falling in the city prior to the federal crackdown, but the operation, which began in mid-August, was immediately followed by a reported decrease in crime. Right? So it says, let's look at some of these statistics. Violent crime, as of September 9th, 2025, violent crime was down 35% compared to the same period in 2023. All right. So it sounds like, according to this, that it's working, right? Arrest, as of September 9th, 2025, authorities reported over 2,100 total arrests since the federal operation began. Firearms seized. More than 200 firearms were seized during the same period. Homeless encampment clearances by September 29th, 2025. 50 encampments have been cleared. So again, it sounds like that this thing is working out just fine. What he sought out to do, according to the White House and the reports that we read thus far, it seems like that he's delivering on those things. He told them they must move out immediately. He promised that he would give them shelters where they can stay. They will make assistance available for addiction, for mental and behavioral health assistance and things of that nature. And basically that he would bring down and reduce the crime. So according to these reports, it seems like he's done that. All right. So Trump's promise to the homeless. Okay. So he made promises to the homeless to access the shelters and mental health assistance. All right. We know what we've heard from the White House, but let's get some different reports and see if those things actually has transpired. So this report from CNN says, but the Trump administration has not delivered on other promises to provide places to stay or mental health services. That's very different than what we just heard from the reports that we read from the White House. Let's continue. It says advocates and unhoused people who spoke to CNN say federal officials just told homeless people to move from encampments when they were cleared, with some describing having to leave behind possessions in the chaos. So what we heard from the White House, from the press secretaries, from things of that nature, all of that stuff about we're gonna, we have a couple of days to move. Otherwise, we're going to provide shelters for you. We're going to provide behavioral places and assistance and emotional and mental assistance for you guys. And all of that other stuff that we just heard, this says something very different. It specifically says that they have not delivered, and this is a report from CNN, on the promises that they made to be able to provide those things. Let's read it one more time. It says they have not delivered on other promises to provide places to stay or mental health services. Advocates and unhoused people who spoke to CNN say federal officials just told homeless people to move from encampments. In other words, just get out of here, right? And then on top of it, no, just you go yourself, leave the stuff behind, right? Don't pick up anything, don't take anything with you. Just go, get up and go. And that's a very different report than what we heard before. Let's see. I want to show you guys a picture. So this is a picture right here. So we can take a look at this picture. So when this is what these sweeps kind of look like. They'll bring a bulldozer through here, right? Where they find an encampment, and they'll have these people leave their stuff behind. And then they'll just actually take this bulldozer and they'll just go right through and they'll tear the tents down and they'll get a big dumpster and they'll just start dumping all of their possessions in the garbage. And so they don't always, you'll get some of the nice cops and police officers that'll actually post up and they'll allow them time to be able to go and get their stuff, break their tents down, and then just get all their stuff and move. But all the officers are not that nice, and you will get stuff like this. This is what a sweep looks like. So I wanted to put this picture up to put it into perspective. So when you're hearing these people say things like they're told to be able to leave their stuff behind in the chaos, this is what this means, and this is what it looks like. They'll have a bulldozer come, leave your stuff behind. Bulldozer just come and just sweep right through the community over all of the stuff. And again, some of these people had just become homeless. So some of the stuff that they have and the possessions that they have is the last things that they had when they became displaced. If they were displaced because of a fire, perhaps, and they had things that were sentimental or important to them, the police was like, keep it moving, move it behind. They've left those things. We had a house fire at one time. Well, the community did, and we had to hurry up and get our stuff and run out. And I remember running out, and Maine, she was like, oh no, you forgot. You have to go back and you have to get something. And there was something very precious to our family that I had to run back in the chaos to be able to grab. I couldn't imagine if the house would have burnt up and I would have left that behind. And I would not have that memory because it's the only memory that I have of this particular situation, right? So just consider that when you think about these homeless people having to leave stuff behind and then just bulldozers coming and running it over and then just taking it, lifting it up and just throwing it in big commercial dumpsters, right? This is what the reports that we're getting from CNN. So these are conflicting reports from what it was that we read a little bit earlier that was coming directly from the White House. But nearly a month later, homeless advocates say the federal government has still not provided any shelters or mental health services. Wait a minute, this is not what we read earlier. Only the city government has continued to provide those services, they say. So in other words, this the same stuff that was available before is just the same stuff that's available now. There's nothing changed. The White House, the government hasn't done anything. This the city, the same shelters that they had available before, that they had access to that were probably overrun or overfilled before, is the only services that they have, and they're using this to justify them running people out so that America or people don't feel bad. Oh no, we're taking care of them. We're offering them something. They're just not taking advantage of it. But the truth of the matter is, according to this, that really isn't the case, right? Um, it says, oh, sorry. Let's go back to the other one. There it is. There we go. It says, press by CNN on whether any additional federal help will be offered. White House spokesperson Abigail Jackson said the city has shelter space available. This will make D.C. safer and cleaner for everyone, Jackson said of the homeless encampment sweeps. What? That's not answering the question. All that is deflecting. That's telling us that what we already knew, that there are shelters available, that has space available, whatever that means, because having space available doesn't mean to have enough space for everybody that you're running out of town. And then it says, oh, this is going to be for the best of everyone. This is going to make it safer. That's not the question that was asked. The question that was asked was very simple. It says, how are you following through on what it was that you promised that you would do? This says a month later, they haven't. The homeless advocates say the federal government hasn't provided any shelters, any mental health services, and the city government has continued to provide those services. All right. Nothing from the federal. Right. So again, these are very conflicting reports from what we read a little bit earlier about all of this supposed help that was being offered, that was coming directly down from the White House. This is very different. Let's continue. This says they're giving advice for the homeless now. All right. So these is the advice that they're giving for the homeless people. It says the Trump administration also hasn't made good on the threat to fine or jail homeless people. Now, that's a good thing to me. But I'm sure Americans who thought that that entire thing was good, they're going to be disappointed to know that they are not following through with that. I think it's a great thing. I think it's terrible to find somebody that's homeless and probably doesn't have a job to begin with, and then they're going to get fines, and then you're going to throw them in jail on top of it, and they're going to have a criminal record, which is going to make it even harder for them to be able to get a job in the future, right? So it says, according to advocates and unhoused residents who spoke to CNN, that hasn't stopped advocates from advising homeless clients to be careful. So they're telling them still to be careful, because now that that threat is out there, just because they haven't enforced it yet, they have the ability to be able to do so. So now they can say, hey, you know what? We warned you. We told you that if you don't go to a shelter and if we catch you, that we can fine you or we can put you in jail. So it's out there in the public. So they're still saying, hey, you know what? Even though it hasn't happened, let's make sure that we be careful. All right. Wilson of the Georgetown Ministry Center said that they are telling their clients to stick together in pairs whenever possible and to not engage law enforcement. So this sounds like the buddy system, when you used to have to go to the pool when you were younger and you were kids and your parents, they take a buddy with you, or if you were walking to the store and maybe you had to hold your friend's hand or your sister, your brother's hand when you're walking. These are grown adults, right? They're down on their luck. They're displaced. We don't know why they're in the situation that they're in, because some people think that every homeless person is a junkie, that they're a drug addict, that it was because of gambling, it's because of drugs, it's because they're lazy, it's because, we hear so many different things, and it's just so sad, the very topical view that people have of an entire community of people that they haven't even interacted with, people that they just don't know. They see them at this street light, with the sign. They don't even make eye contact with them. Oh, they're junkies. They're drug addicts. You know what I mean? Go get a job. And it's just like, man, these are all different individuals from different walks of life, right? And homelessness is not just specific, germane, or isolated to your city or your state. It's all over the world. It can't be this many individuals who are in this position because of drugs, because of gambling, because of being lazy, because of being stupid or ignorant or filthy or whatever the case is, right? right? It can't be. There has to be more to it, right? But these people are being treated like children now, and they're being advised to be able to, follow the buddy system, if you will, and make sure you don't engage law enforcement. It says Taylor Bush, an outreach advocacy manager for the ministry center, told CNN her advice is to try to be less visible and avoid lingering in the doorways of shops, restaurants, and apartment buildings. Dispensing this kind of advice, Wilson said, has been incredibly painful. So just think about it like this: you're telling people to be less visible, right? So it's like, look, as and these people aren't visible to begin with. The homeless people are basically in a visible community. People already, as it stands, they don't look at them and make eye contact with them like we talked about before, right? But now they're saying try to be less visible. It says to look at an individual and say, my advice to you is either leave this community or make yourself invisible. It's a terrible message to deliver to an individual. And I agree. They're already considered less than human. They're already invisible by many individuals who walk right by them, who they'll wave or they'll speak to them, and you don't want to make eye contact because you're afraid that they're going to ask you for change or you don't have any money to give them. So you can't even smile or wave back at them or speak back to them, right? But now, on top of that, we need you to be even less visible than that, right? So just disappear as much as you can, if you want to be safe and to save your life. That's scary advice to be able to have to give to another human being who already is going through so much in life. And so that should just give you some type of indication as to how bad things are. Wilson emphasized that offering shelter beds is not enough. She said many homeless people view shelters as places they cannot thrive or where they have had past experiences that have been extremely traumatizing or negative for them. Now, she said many of their clients are constantly on the move and hiding. They often seek shelter in libraries or other public places to get out of the heat, she said, but are trying harder to blend in and move along more frequently, right? So, what a lot of people don't know and understand is a lot of these people, the truth of the matter is, they've been traumatized in a lot of these shelters. Um, I'll see people sleeping outside of the shelters a lot of times. And I've talked to them, we walk up to them, we'll help them, we'll give them food or assistance or whatever, clothes, and we'll ask them, are they going in? And a lot of them, they'll say no. And some of them are very almost afraid to explain or tell you why, which lets you know some bad things that might be going on in there. But they'll stay by the shelters because they want to receive the food service. So whenever they're serving food, they'll be able to go in and get the food services, whether it be the breakfast. I think they do a breakfast and they do a dinner. I don't know if they do a lunch or not. So they'll stay by for that, but they don't want to stay in there because remember, these people, they don't have a voice. So the police isn't going to investigate these things if there's sexual abuse that's going on in these places when they're staying overnight. Yeah, right. Sexual abuse. Just think about that. These people are being raped, right? Or what about them being beaten? Because again, a lot of these people, they're not looked at as being human. They're looked at as being less than human. So they go inside of these shelters and they're being locked inside of these places for the night where they can't leave out. There's all type of stuff that goes on in these places. So again, to this point, this is saying right here that a lot of these people have been traumatized. They feel like they can't thrive in these places, right? Or they've been traumatized for having been in those places. So a lot of them are reluctant, which is why it's scary that the options that you're giving someone is either go inside of these places or we're going to put you in jail. So that kind of makes things even worse to me because now if these terrible people, not everybody that works in the shelter is terrible, but just like in any other field of work, there are some people that aren't the greatest individuals that are preying on people in these situations. And if I'm hearing that, and I'm hearing, okay, they either gonna have to go to jail or they'll come here, right? I know that I got some people that's gonna be coming to be able to victimize now, right? You can't give people an option like that, I mean, you can. Apparently, that's what they're doing, but when you do and you don't understand all of the ramifications behind what's going on, I think that it's unhealthy. And when you sit down and you speak to these people, they'll explain to you. Some of them, you know what, this is fantastic. I found a great shelter. They make sure that they're there. They take advantage of all the services that they have available to them. But some of these shelters aren't great, and these people have had a lot of trauma, traumatizing situations of being in these things, and that's the reason why they don't want to go back into them. Yeah, let's continue. So we have conflicting, very conflicting information that we're getting from actual CNN reports and from people in the homeless community versus what we heard and we read earlier from the White House. The spokesperson said county outreach teams are monitoring the situation and that our proactive approach will continue to help us evaluate and respond to any potential changes. Mirror's Kitchen is ramping up its communication with clients to the degree that we are able. We give people flip phones so they can stay in touch with us, he said. So they're giving them flip phones so that way they're able to stay in touch and let them know exactly what's going on. I think that's a great idea. Difficult for them to be able to get access to electricity to charge it, but it does give them an opportunity to be able to stay in contact with people and let them know what's going on. But with the pressure placed on the homeless population during the law enforcement surge, his teams have lost contact with at least 25 people. He worries that many of them won't receive critical help as long as they are unreachable. If that person was getting a prescription or getting an inhaler regularly from our medical provider, and now we can't find them, then how are they getting it, he asks. He points out that many Americans are only one. You guys have heard me say this time and time again. Many Americans are only one lost paycheck or crippling medical bill away from becoming homeless themselves. This cannot be more true. I'm telling you, I'm living this right now. I'm living this right now. If I told you my story, like literally, some people, they just don't have that covering. They don't have that safety net, right? And they're just one situation away from being in the situation, just being homeless. It says most people have more in common with people who are living on the streets than they do with the wealthiest people in this country. All right, so I want you guys to think about that and ponder that because that's an excellent point. But yeah, most people, we talked about this time and time again, are just one paycheck away, one bad medical diagnosis away, one calamity, car accident, car going down on you, somebody receiving cancer or hurt their back at work, and we just don't. You don't have the savings, you don't have the covering, you don't have additional things that's in place to be able to sustain you while you are getting through that situation. And it says that most people have more in common with people that live on the streets than we do the wealthiest people in the country. So according to what we've seen thus far from CNN reports, it does not seem like or sound like that the Trump administration is delivering on their promises. It just sounds like that they're just I don't know, just releasing things from the White House and from press secretaries, and they're falsifying numbers and information that isn't consistent and is definitely conflicting with what is being reported. How true that is, I don't know. This is just what we've seen and we found through our research, and this is what it's telling us on CNN. So the next thing we have to worry about is I'm sorry. The next thing we have to question or ask ourselves is the decrease? Excuse me, I can't talk today. Is the decrease in crime directly attributed to the homeless sweeps? Right. So we read a statistic a little bit earlier about how crime was already falling, but since all of this started to happen, right, crime rate has come down. Hooray, we can celebrate. We're super happy because, the homeless are off the streets. So now the place is getting safer, right? But remember, we read that it was already getting safer to begin with. So is this directly attributed to the homeless sweeps? All right, so let's look at some statistics. So now we'll look at this. It says context of the decrease. So pre-existing decline, a significant decrease in crime had already occurred in DC during 2024 after a peak in 2023. For example, homicides and carjackings both saw a dramatic drop in 2024, with carjackings nearly cut in half. Correlation versus causation. It is difficult to determine whether the recent decrease in crime is directly caused by the clearing of homeless encampments or is a continuation of the prior downward trend. Remember, we said that the crime rate was already decreasing before he started this homeless sweep, right? So he's celebrating and he's inflating and using these numbers. But if you looked at the whole context of it, then the crime was already coming down beforehand. Federal versus local view. While President Trump claimed that the city had been overrun by drugged out maniacs and homeless people, those were his words. Local DC officials stated that crime was already falling. The federal takeover and clearing of encampments prompted strong criticism from DC Mayor Bowser and homelessness advocates who argue that removing encampments does not address the root cause of homelessness. I have said this time and time again. This does not get to the bottom of what is going on and why this is happening, right? It does not address it. So what we're doing is we're creating an argument, and we're creating and falsifying numbers. Oh, you know what? We can make the city safer. We just have to get the homeless people out, and then we release these numbers about how crime is coming down, even though if you look at the totality before all of this, crime was already decreasing in the DC area. We started saying that we're going to offer all of these shelters to these individuals and this mental health and addiction and substance abuse counseling and programs. And then you put out these press releases saying that you're doing them, and then you get the reports from CNN and from all over saying, and even from directly from the homeless community, no, they're not doing that. In fact, they're just telling us to get out. They're telling us to leave our stuff behind. They're bringing bulldozers in to be able to do sweeps and things of that nature, and that's it. But we haven't the same shelters that were there available before are the same ones that are there now. We still not getting the mental or physical or emotional health assistance that we need, and nothing has changed other than the fact that he's using this to be able to justify what he's doing, because a lot of advocates like myself, a lot of advocates like many of you who feel like that homeless people are people and they should be treated with dignity and with respect, they were getting up in arms about how this entire thing looked and what was transpiring and what was happening. As a result, they were catching a lot of heat and a lot of backlash. So they had to be able to use these things to be able to justify what it is that's being done. So we heard from the White House and we've heard from CNN reports. I want you guys to drop a comment and tell me what you think. Which do you believe? Which do you believe to be true? Do you believe that, a month later, that Trump has delivered on those promises that he said to DC to be able to clean it up, to be able to get the homeless people out, but in the process to make sure that he was able to give them shelter, he was able to give them the mental health and addiction assistance that they needed? Or do you believe those CNN reports and all the other reports saying that none of these things has happened the way that they're saying in their reporting that they're happening? They haven't given them the funding for the shelters. They're not giving them the mental and addiction assistance that they need, and that crime was already decreasing, and the homeless community was not directly attributing to the crime that was transpiring. What do you believe? Drop a comment and let me know. I love to hear from you guys. And again, like I told you before, I'm going to definitely acknowledge each one of your comments. I'm going to either comment back and we can have some great dialogue together, or I'm going to at least acknowledge the fact that you dropped the comment. But I think that we have to give this attention that it needs and deserves, because this is a crisis. And by us focusing on all of this other nonsense, we're still not getting to the root of homelessness. One of the things that I want to leave you guys with and considering is that, and I have a video on my page about this as well, the homeless community is getting older. All right. And what do I mean by older is that the majority of these individuals who are homeless, these are individuals that are, 50 years old and above, many of these even senior citizens. Right. So you have to question and ask yourself this question, like, if these individuals are homeless at 45, 47, 50, 55, what is attributing to this? Why is this happening? Why is all of our grandparents, our parents, our grandparents, people of that age, why are these individuals becoming homeless? Right? We got to get to the root cause of this. When people talk about people being lazy, I'm not seeing an influx of 20, 25-year-old people that's out on the streets being homeless. The majority of the people that we're helping are people in whom are older than I am. Right? So we have to really get to the root cause of this. But in the meantime, we have to make sure we give this the attention that it needs and deserves. And we have to make sure that we hold individuals accountable who's saying that they're going to do one thing, but they're doing something different. Right? So at the end of the day, I want to hear those comments. Let me know what you believe, guys. Do you believe that he's delivered on those promises? or do you believe that it's all BS, and basically the stuff that from CNN and the other reports are actually true? All right. Thank you guys for your time. Thank you guys for listening. Love you guys. Thanks again for the support. All right. And make sure you drop those comments and subscribe. Thanks, guys. Peace.